Hello, all you beautiful people out there, and welcome. Yes, Lori, I do. In fact, I had one earlier this morning with Damien at Hope. Um, so I'm going to do Today in History. Not a whole lot today in history. My usual site, history.com, just has a thing about Chinese cherry blossoms being planted on the Potomac, which is a great thing, but you know, let's get some more exciting things. Like in 1350, while besieging Gibraltar, Alfonso XI of Castile died of the Black Death. In 1512, Spanish explorer Juan Ponce de Leon sights Florida. Sorry for my pronunciation. Um, I know that's probably not a Spanish pronunciation. That is because I was taught French in high school. And then in 1802, the Treaty of Amiens is signed, ending the French Revolutionary War. So, there is more on that site. That is HistoryNet if you want to see the other stuff. Um, so, at any rate, welcome, Lori Hayes. I hope you enjoy it. Uh, so getting on to Leviticus 8 through 15, the Purification Rites. Verse 1, the Lord said to Moses, bring Aaron and his sons, their garments, the anointing oil, the bowl for the sin offering, the 2 rams, and the basket containing bread made without yeast, and gather the entire assembly at the entrance to the tent of meeting. Moses did as the Lord commanded him, and the assembly gathered at the entrance to the tent of meeting. I just want to point out, this sounds like deja vu. I think in Exodus they were ordained to be priests. Hello, Kellen Sabahart. Sorry if I got your name wrong. Um, verse 5. Moses said to the assembly, this is what the Lord has commanded to be done. Then Moses brought Aaron and his sons forward and washed them with water. He put the tunic on Aaron, tied the sash around him, clothed him with the robe, and put the ephod on him. He also fastened the ephod with a decorative waistband, which he tied around him. He placed the breastpiece on him and put the Urim and Thummim in the breastpiece. Then he placed the turban on Aaron's head and set the gold plate, the sacred emblem, on front of it, as the Lord commanded Moses. Then Moses took the anointing oil and anointed the tabernacle and everything in it, and so consecrated them. He sprinkled some of the oil on the altar 7 times, anointing the altar and all its utensils, and the basin with its stand, to consecrate them. He poured some of the anointing oil on Aaron's head and anointed him to consecrate him. Then he brought Aaron's sons forward, put tunics on them, tied sashes around them, and fastened caps on them, as the Lord commanded Moses. He then presented the bull for the sin offering, and Aaron and his sons laid their hands on its head. Moses slaughtered the bull and took some of the blood with his finger. He put it on all the horns of the altar to purify the altar. He poured out the rest of the blood at the base of the altar. So he consecrated it to make atonement for it. Why do you have to make atonement for a inanimate object? I'm just saying. Yeah, nevermore. Plus, if you'll remember in Exodus, he put some blood on Aaron's ear. Hey, yeah, Larky. Here you go. A tip to redeem myself for making a fool of myself last time. Don't worry about it. It's fine. You know, you don't have to apologize. It's fine. I let people ramble on my channel. But while we're here, and while Sebastian is here, and I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name, I do want to let everyone know that uh, our times are very much different, and so when we do another show, because we are going to do another show, um, that we are going to we will take questions, but we're going to turn it off at some point because it was past midnight his time when we left off, and that was kind of um, not it was kind of hard for him. So just to let you know, but don't worry about it, Sebastian. Okay, verse 16. Moses also took all the fat around the internal organs, the long lobe of the liver, and both kidneys and their fat, and burned it on the altar. But the bull, with its hide and its flesh and its intestines, he burned up outside the camp as the Lord commanded Moses. He then presented the ram for the burnt offering, and Aaron and his sons laid their hands on its head. Then Moses slaughtered the ram and splashed the blood against the sides of the altar. He cut the ram into pieces and burned the head, the pieces, and the fat. He washed the internal organs and the legs with water and burned the whole ram on the altar. It was a burnt offering, a pleasing aroma, a food offering presented to the Lord as the Lord commanded Moses. Um, I don't know about you, but slaughtering um, animals for no good reason, it's not. If you want to kill animals for food, that's fine. I got no problem with it. What I do have a problem with is killing animals for no reason whatsoever. Verse 22. He then presented the other ram, the ram for the ordination, and Aaron and his sons laid their hands on its head. Moses slaughtered the ram and took some of its blood and put it on the lobe of Aaron's right ear, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. Okay, so basically it's just telling us the same thing Exodus told us. Sorry about that. Moses also brought Aaron's sons forward and put some of the blood on the lobes of their right ears, on the thumbs of their right hands, and on the big toes of their right feet. Then he splashed blood against the sides of the altar. I just want to know why blood is so important to this God. I mean, I know he's a war god, okay? He just is. Yahweh is a war god. But can't help it. That's what he is. He's a war god. But I just don't understand this obsession with blood. Verse 25. After that, he took the fat tail, all the fat around the internal organs, the long lobe of the liver, both kidneys and their fat, and the right thigh. And from the basket of bread made without yeast, which was before the Lord, he took one thick loaf with olive oil mixed in, and one thin loaf, and he put these on the fat portions and on the right thigh. He put all these in the hands of Aaron and his sons, and they waved them before the Lord as a wave offering. I have no idea what this wave offering is supposed to be. I mean, it just sounds stupid to me. I guess nevermore. Yeah, exactly. He is a war god. Okay. So, verse 28. Then Moses took them from their hands and burned them on the altar on top of the burnt offering. I'm guessing they and them refer to Aaron and his sons. A food offering presented to the Lord. Moses also took the breast, which was his share of the ordination ram, and waved it before the Lord as a wave offering, as the Lord commanded Moses. Maybe one of these days I'll get a rabbi in here, and so he can explain all of these offerings, if the rabbi even knows what all of these offerings are. But I would assume the rabbi would know something like that. Then Moses took some of the, this is verse 30. Then Moses took some of the anointing oil and some of the blood from the altar and sprinkled them on Aaron and his garments and on his sons and their garments. So he consecrated Aaron and his garments and his sons and their garments. Moses then said to Aaron and his sons, cook the meat at the entrance to the tent of meeting and eat it there with the bread from the basket of ordination offering, as I was commanded. Aaron and his sons are to eat it. Then burn up the rest of the meat and the bread. Okay, so this is incredibly wasteful, especially in that time. And we're not even talking about as ancient as this is purported to be, because Moses didn't exist. Sorry to burst your bubble, Christians, but Moses didn't exist. Okay? But it is incredibly wasteful to burn food at this time because basically, it was nobody knew if people would um, be able to eat the next day. Incredibly wasteful. Verse 33, do not leave the entrance to the tent of meeting for 7 days until the days of your ordination are completed, for your ordination will last 7 days. What has been done today was commanded by the Lord to make atonement for you. You must stay at the entrance to the tent of meeting day and night for 7 days and do what the Lord requires, so you will not die. For that is what I've been commanded. So Aaron and his sons did everything the Lord commanded through Moses. Okay, God, why are you going to kill them? I mean, seriously. This is messed up. Chapter 9. On the 8th day, Moses summoned Aaron and his sons and the elders of Israel. He said to Aaron, take a bull calf for your sin offering and a ram for your burnt offering, both without defect, and present them before the Lord. How could he sin if he wasn't allowed to do anything for 7 days? Verse 3, then say to the Israelites, take a male goat for a sin offering, a calf and a lamb, both a year old and without defect, for a burnt offering, and an ox and a ram for a fellowship offering, to sacrifice before the Lord, together with a grain offering mixed with olive oil. For today the Lord will appear to you. They took the things Moses commanded to the front of the tent of meeting, and the entire assembly came near and stood before the Lord. Then Moses said, this is what the Lord has commanded you to do, so that the glory of the Lord may appear to you. Moses said to Aaron, come to the altar and sacrifice your sin offering and your burnt offering, and make atonement for yourself and the people. Sacrifice the offering that is for the people, and make atonement for them, as the Lord has commanded. So Aaron came to the altar and slaughtered the calf as a sin offering for himself. His sons brought the blood to him, and he dipped his finger into the blood and put it on the horns of the altar. The rest of the blood he poured out at the base of the altar. On the altar he burned the fat, the kidneys, and the long lobe of the liver from the sin offering, as the Lord commanded Moses. The flesh and the hide he burned up outside the camp. I don't know, Lisa, but a lot. A lot. Verse 12. Then he slaughtered the burnt offering. His sons handed him the blood, and he splashed it against the sides of the altar. They handed him the burnt offering piece by piece, including the head, and he burnt them on the altar. He washed the internal organs and the legs and burnt them on top of the burnt offering on the altar. Aaron then brought the offering that was for the people. He took the goat for the people's sin offering and slaughtered it and offered it for a sin offering. As he did with the first one, he brought the burnt offering and offered it in the prescribed way. He also brought the grain offering, took a handful of it, and burned it on the altar in addition to the morning's burnt offering. He slaughtered the ox and ram as the fellowship offering for the people. His sons handed him the blood, and he splashed it against the sides of the altar. But the fat portions of the ox and ram, the fat tail, the layer of fat, the kidneys, and the long lobe of the liver, These they laid on the breasts, and then Aaron burned the fat on the altar. Aaron waved the breasts and the right thigh before the Lord as a wave offering as Moses commanded. Then Aaron lifted his hands toward the people and blessed them. And having sacrificed the sin offering and the burnt offering and the fellowship offering, he stepped down. Moses and Aaron went into the tent of meeting. When they came out, they blessed the people, and the glory of the Lord appeared to all the people. Fire came out from the presence of the Lord and consumed the burnt offering and the fat portions on the altar. And when all the people saw it, they shouted for joy and fell face down. Chapter 10. Aaron's sons Nadab and Abihu took their censers. I don't know, uh, Sebastian, since you're not a native English speaker, a censer is that thing that in your church the priest will come and um, uh, wave it. It holds the incense. Okay, so going back, Aaron's sons Nadab and Abihu took their censers, put fire in them, and added incense, and they offered unauthorized fire before the Lord, contrary to his command. Okay, so why? Thank you, Sebastian. Um, why blood for the blood god? I don't understand how they could have offered unauthorized fire before the Lord. That doesn't make any sense to me. Um, Verse 2. So fire came out from the presence of the Lord and consumed them, and they died before the Lord. Moses then said to Aaron, "This is what the Lord spoke of when he said, 'Among those who approach me, I will be proved holy. In the sight of all the people, I will be honored.'" Aaron remained silent. He is a terrible father. Aaron is. What kind of a father doesn't stand up for his own kids? Verse 4. Moses summoned Mishael and Elzaphan, sons of Aaron's uncle Uzziel. Again, we have an L name, even though we are now we are supposedly in the age of Yahweh. We have an L name, and said to them, "Come here, carry your cousins outside the camp, away from the front of the sanctuary." So they came and carried them, still in their tunics, outside the camp, as Moses ordered. Then Moses said to Aaron and his sons, Eleazar and Ithamar, "Do not let your hair become unkept, and do not tear your clothes, or you will die, and the Lord will be angry with the whole community. But your relatives, all the Israelites, may mourn for those the Lord has destroyed by fire. Do not leave the entrance to the tent of meeting, or you will die, because the Lord's anointing oil is on you." So they did as Moses said. I guess so, Nevermore. Um, Verse 8. Then the Lord said to Aaron, "You and your sons are not to drink wine or other fermented drink whenever you go into the tent of meeting, or you will die. Okay, God, this is getting very old. This is a lasting ordinance for the generations to come, so that you can distinguish between the holy and the common, between the unclean and the clean. And so you can teach the Israelites all the decrees the Lord has given through Moses. Moses said to Aaron and his remaining sons, Eleazar and Ithamar, take the grain offering left over from the food offering, prepared without yeast, presented to the Lord, and eat it beside the altar, for it is most holy. Eat it in the sanctuary area, because it is your share and your son's share of the food offerings presented to the Lord. For so I have been commanded. But you and your sons and your daughters may eat the breast that was waved and the thigh that was presented. Eat them in a ceremonially clean place. They have been given to you and your children as your share of the Israelites' fellowship offering. The thigh that was presented and the breast that was waved must be brought with the fat portions of the food offerings to be waved before the Lord as a wave offering. This will be the perpetual share for you and your children. When Moses inquired about the goat of the sin offering and found that it had been burned up, he was angry with Eleazar and Ithamar, Aaron's remaining sons, and asked, why didn't you eat the sin offering in the sanctuary area? It is most holy. It was given to you to take away the sin of the community by making atonement for them before the Lord. Since its blood was not taken into the holy place, you should have eaten the goat in the sanctuary area as I commanded you. Moses, what if they weren't hungry? I'm telling you what, this doesn't make any sense. Aaron replied to Moses, today they sacrificed their sin offering and their burnt offering before the Lord, but such things as this have happened to me. Would the Lord have been pleased if I had eaten the sin offering today? When Moses heard this, he was satisfied. Chapter 11. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, say to the Israelites, of all the animals that live on land, these are the ones you may eat. You may eat any animal that has a divided hoof and that chews the cud. There are some that only chew the cud or only have a divided hoof, but you must not eat them. Okay, so chewing the cud is like chewing the grass. And a divided hoof, that would be like a horse does not have a divided hoof. So so they can't eat horses. But the horse does chew the cud. But they can't eat anything that doesn't eat grass and also has a divided hoof. The camel, though it chews the cud, does not have a divided hoof. It is ceremonially unclean for you. The hyrax, I'm assuming that's not the hyrax on the evolutionary tree, since the hyrax of that didn't exist in this time. So I have no idea what the hyrax in this sense means. The rabbit, though it chews the cud, does not have a divided hoof. It is unclean for you. The pig, though it has a divided hoof, does not chew the cud. It is unclean for you. You must not eat their meat or touch their carcasses. They are unclean for you. Of all the creatures living in the water of the seas and the streams, you may eat any that have fins and scales. But all creatures in the seas or streams that do not have fins and scales, whether among all the swarming things or among all the other living creatures in the water, you are to regard as unclean. Anything living in the water that does not have fins and scales is to be regarded as unclean. These are the birds you are to regard as unclean and not eat: the eagle, the vulture, the black vulture, the red kite, any kind of black kite, any kind of raven, the horned owl, the screech owl, the gull, any kind of hawk, and the little owl, the cormorant, the great owl, the white owl, the desert owl, and the osprey, the stork, any kind of heron, the hoopoe, and the bat. All flying insects that walk on all fours are to be regarded as unclean. There are, however, some flying insects that walk on all fours that you may eat, those that have jointed legs for hopping on the ground. I'm guessing those might be grasshoppers. Um, verse 22. Of these you may eat any kind of locust, katydid. I'm not quite sure what that is. Cricket or grasshopper, but all other flying insects that have 4 legs you are to regard as unclean. You make yourselves unclean by these. Whoever touches their carcasses will be unclean till evening. Whoever picks up one of their carcasses must wash their clothes, and they will be unclean till evening. Every animal that does not have a divided hoof, or that does not chew the cud, is unclean. Whoever touches the carcass of any of them will be unclean. Of all the animals that walk on all fours, those that walk on their paws are unclean for you. Whoever touches their carcasses will be unclean till evening. Anyone who picks up their carcasses must wash their clothes, and they will be unclean till evening. These animals are unclean. Of the animals that move along the ground, these are unclean for you: the weasel, the rat, any kind of lizard, the gecko, the monitor lizard, the wall lizard, the skink. And no, I did not read that wrong. They said the skink, and the chameleon. Of all those that move along the ground, these are unclean. Whoever touches them when they are dead will be unclean till evening. When one of them dies and falls on something, that article, whatever its use, will be unclean, whether it is made of wood, cloth, hide, or sackcloth. Put it in water, it will be unclean till evening, and then it will be clean. If one of them falls into a clay pot, everything in it will be unclean, and you must break the pot. Any food you are allowed to eat that has come into contact with water from any such pot is unclean, and any liquid that is drunk from such a pot is unclean. Anything that one of their carcasses falls on becomes unclean. An oven or cooking pot must be broken up. They are unclean, and you are to regard them as unclean. A spring, however, or cistern for collecting water remains clean, but anyone who touches one of these carcasses is unclean. If a carcass falls on any seeds that are to be planted, they remain clean. But if water has been put on the seed and a carcass falls on it, it is unclean for you. I have no idea what he's talking about. I really don't. My mind checked out like maybe 2 chapters ago. If an animal that you are allowed to eat dies, anyone who touches its carcass will be unclean till evening. Anyone who eats some of its carcass must wash their clothes, and they will be unclean till evening. Every creature that moves along the ground is to be regarded as unclean. It is not to be eaten. You are not to eat any creature that moves along the ground, whether it moves on its belly or walks on all fours or on many feet. It is unclean. Do not defile yourselves by any of these creatures. Verse 44, I am the Lord your God. Consecrate yourselves and be holy, because I am holy. Do not make yourselves unclean by any creature that moves along the ground. I am the Lord who brought you up out of Egypt to be your God. Therefore be holy, because I am holy. These are the regulations concerning animals, birds, every living thing that moves about in the water, and every creature that moves on the ground. You must distinguish between the unclean and clean, between living creatures that may be eaten and those that may not be eaten. This is true nevermore. So, verse 12. I mean, not verse 12. Chapter 12. And this one really makes me mad, okay? So if I start cussing or whatever, please don't mind me. The Lord said to Moses, say to the Israelites, a woman who becomes pregnant and gives birth to a son will be ceremonially unclean for 7 days, just as she is unclean during her monthly period. On the 8th day, the boy is to be circumcised. Then the woman must wait 33 days to be purified from her bleeding. She must not touch anything sacred or go to the sanctuary until the days of her purification are over. Now you know why this chapter makes me angry. If she gives birth to a daughter, for 2 weeks the woman will be unclean as during her period. Then she must wait 66 days to be purified from her bleeding. And this, folks, is why we do not take our morals from the Bible. Verse 6, when the days of her purification for a son or a daughter are over, she is to bring to the priest at the entrance to the tent of meeting a year-old lamb for a burnt offering and a young pigeon or a dove for a sin offering. What sin has she committed? Seriously. Verse 7, he shall offer them before the Lord to make atonement for her, and then she will be ceremonially clean from her flow of blood. These are the regulations for the woman who gives birth to a boy or girl. But if she cannot afford a lamb, she is to bring 2 doves or 2 young pigeons, one for a burnt offering and the other for a sin offering. In this way, the priest will make atonement for her and she will be clean. Chapter 13. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, when anyone has a swelling or a rash or a shiny spot on their skin that may be a defiling skin disease, they must be brought to Aaron the priest or to one of his sons who is a priest. The priest is to examine the sore on the skin, and if the hair in the sore has turned white and the sore appears to be more deep than skin deep, it is a defiling skin disease. When the priest examines that person, he shall pronounce them ceremonially unclean. If the shiny spot on the skin is white but does not appear to be more than skin deep and the hair is not turned white, the priest is to isolate the affected person for 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest is to examine them, and if he sees the sores unchanged and has not spread in the skin, he is to isolate them for another 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest is to examine them again, and if the sore has faded and has not spread in the skin, the priest shall pronounce them clean. It is only a rash. They must wash their clothes, and they will be clean. But if the rash does spread in their skin after they have shown themselves to the priest to be pronounced clean, and they must appear before the priest again, the priest is to examine that person, and if the rash is spread in the skin, he shall pronounce them unclean. It is a defiling skin disease. And this is why we don't use priests for doctors. Verse 9. When anyone has a defiling skin disease, they must be brought to the priest. The priest is to examine them, and if there is a white swelling in the skin, that is, turn the hair white, and if there is raw flesh in the swelling, it is a chronic skin disease, and the priest shall pronounce them unclean. He is not to isolate them because they are already unclean. If the disease breaks out all over their skin, and so far as the priest can see, it covers all the skin of the affected person from head to foot, the priest is to examine them, and if the disease has covered their whole body, he shall pronounce them clean. Since it is all turned white, they are clean. But whenever raw flesh appears on them, they will be unclean. When the priest sees the raw flesh, he shall pronounce them unclean. The raw flesh is unclean. They have a defiling disease. If the raw flesh changes and turns white, they must go to the priest. The priest is to examine them, and if the sores have turned white, the priest shall pronounce the affected person clean. Then they will be clean. Boys and girls, this is why we don't get medical advice from the Bible. Yeah, nevermore, right? Um, so verse 21. But if, when the priest examines it, there's no white hair in it, and it is not more than skin deep, and it's faded, then the priest is to isolate them for 7 days. If it is spreading in the skin, the priest shall pronounce them unclean. It is a defiling disease. But if the spot is unchanged and has not spread, it is only a scar from the boil. Uh, and the priest shall pronounce them clean. When someone has a burn on their skin and a reddish white or white spot appears in the raw flesh of the burn, the priest is to examine the spot, and if the hair in it has turned white and it appears more than skin deep, it is a defiling disease that is broken out in the burn. The priest shall pronounce them unclean. It is a defiling skin disease, but if the priest examines it, and there is no white hair in the spot, and if it is not more than skin deep and has faded, then the priest is to isolate them for 7 days. On the seventh day, the priest is to examine that person, and if it is spreading in the skin, the priest shall pronounce them unclean. It is a defiling skin disease. If, however, the spot is unchanged and has not spread in the skin, but it is faded, it is a swelling from the burn, and the priest shall pronounce them clean. It is only a scar from the burn. If a man or a woman has a sore on their head or chin, the priest is to examine the sore, and if it appears to be more than skin deep, and the hair in it is yellow and thin, the priest shall pronounce them unclean. It is a defiling skin disease on the head or chin. But if, when the priest examines the sore, it does not seem to be more than skin deep, and there is no black hair in it, then the priest is to isolate the affected person for 7 days. On the seventh day, the priest is to examine the sore, and if it has not spread, and there is no yellow hair in it, and does not appear to be more than skin deep, then the man or woman must shave themselves except for the affected area. That's totally bizarre. On the seventh day, the priest is to examine the sore, and if it has not spread in the skin and appears to be no more than skin deep, the priest shall pronounce them clean. They must wash their clothes, and they will be clean. But if the sore spreads in the skin after they are pronounced clean. The priest is to examine them, and if he finds that the sore has spread in the skin, he does not need to look for yellow hair. They are unclean. If, however, the sore is unchanged so far as the priest can see, and a black hair has grown in it, the affected person is healed. They are clean, and the priest shall pronounce them clean. When a man or a woman has white spots on the skin, the priest is to examine them, and if the spots are dull white, it is a harmless rash that has broken out on the skin. They are clean. A man who has lost his hair and is bald is clean. If he has lost his hair from the front of his scalp and has a bald forehead, he is clean. But if he has a reddish white sore on his bald head or forehead, it is a defiling disease breaking out on his head or forehead. The priest is to examine him, and if the swollen sore on his head or forehead is reddish white, like a defiling skin disease, the man is diseased and is unclean. The priest shall pronounce him unclean because of the sore on his head. Mr. God has mental problems. I agree, Lisa. Verse 45, anyone with such a defiling disease must wear torn clothes, let their hair be unkept, cover the lower part of their face, and cry out, unclean, unclean. As long as they have the disease, they remain unclean. They must live alone. They must live outside the camp. I know these people had no idea about psychology, but social isolation is the very worst thing you can do to a person, especially one that is sick. Now, I agree to a certain extent that they should social distance, but they should do it like we do it right now, like 6 feet apart and whatnot. But again, I can't really fault them because they didn't know about psychology. But at any rate, um, verse 47, as for any fabric that is spoiled with a defiling mold, any woolen or linen clothing, any woven or knitted material of linen or wool, if the affected area in the fabric, the leather, the woven or knitted material, or any leather article is greenish or reddish, it is a defiling mold and must be shown to the priest. The priest is to examine the affected area and isolate the article for 7 days. I have no fucking clue what he's talking about. Verse 51, on the 7th day, he is to examine it, and if the mold has spread in the fabric, the woven or knitted material, or the leather, whatever its use, it is a persistent defiling mold. The article is unclean. He must burn the fabric or any leather article it has been spoiled because the defiling mold is persistent. The article must be burned. Wow, so now we've got molds being defiled. All right, you know what? This is getting old. I'm skipping some verses. I'm going to chapter 14. The Lord said to Moses, these are the regulations for any diseased person at the time of their ceremonial cleansing, when they are brought to the priest. The priest is to go outside the camp and examine them. If they have been healed of their defiling skin disease, well, God, if you're God, why don't you heal them of their defiling skin disease? Then they wouldn't have a defiling skin disease. Ever thought of that? Then the priest shall order that one of the birds be killed over fresh water in a clay pot. He is then to take the live bird and dip it, together with the cedar wood, the scarlet yarn, and the hyssop, into the blood of the bird that was killed over fresh water. 7 times he shall sprinkle the one to be cleansed of the defiling disease, and then pronounce them clean. After that, he is to release the live bird in the open fields. We have gotten into Crazyville, and I know we're gonna get into Crazyville again, especially in Jeremiah and Ezekiel, but this is Crazyville. The person to be cleansed must wash their clothes, shave off all their hair, and bathe with water. Then they will be ceremonially clean. After this, they may come into the camp, but they must stay outside their tent for 7 days. On the 7th day, they must shave off all their hair. They must shave their head, beard, eyebrows, and the rest of their hair. Why the eyebrows? I'm just saying, why the eyebrows? On the 8th day, they must bring 2 male lambs and 1 ewe lamb, a year old, each without defect, along with 3/10 of an ephah of the finest flour mixed with olive oil for a grain offering, and 1 log of oil. The priest who pronounces them clean shall present both the one to be cleansed and their offerings before the Lord at the entrance to the tent of meeting. Excuse me, God, but it's not their fault they got sick. It's your fault. Not that I actually believe in the God of the Bible, but if you do believe in the God of the Bible, it is this God's fault that they got sick. So who should be doing penance here? I'm just saying. Verse 13. He is to slaughter the lamb in the sanctuary area where the sin offering and the burnt offering are slaughtered. Like the sin offering, the guilt offering belongs to the priest. It is most holy. What guilt? Why is he guilty because he got sick? This makes no damn sense. The priest is to take some of the blood of the guilt offering and put it on the lobe of the right ear of the one to be cleansed, on the thumb of their right hand, and on the big toe of their right foot. The priest shall then take some of the log of oil, pour it in the palm of his own left hand, dip his right forefinger into the oil in his palm, and with his fingers sprinkle some of it before the Lord 7 times. The priest is to put some of the oil remaining in his palm on the lobe of the right ear of the one to be cleansed, on the thumb of their right hand, and on the big toe of their right foot, on top of the blood of the guilt offering. The rest of the oil in his palm the priest shall put on the head of the one to be cleansed to make atonement for them before the Lord. Again, why do they need atonement? Again, this is just fucked up. I don't know another word for it. Verse 19. Then the priest is to sacrifice the sin offering and make atonement for the one to be cleansed from their uncleanness. After that, the priest shall slaughter the burnt offering and offer it on the altar together with the grain offering and make atonement for them, and they will be clean. If, however, they are poor and cannot afford these, they must take 1 male lamb as a guilt offering to be waved to make atonement for them, together with 1/10 of an ephah of the finest flour mixed with olive oil for a grain offering, a log of oil, and 2 doves or 2 young pigeons, such as they can afford, one for sin offering, the other for burnt offering. On the 8th day, they must bring them for their cleansing to the priest at the entrance to the tent of meeting before the Lord. The priest is to take the lamb for the guilt offering, together with the log of oil, wave them before the Lord as a wave offering. He shall slaughter the lamb for the guilt offering. Again, what guilt? What guilt? The dude or dudette was sick. I'm skipping some verses because this is making me mad. Verse 28, some of the oil in his palm is to be put in the same places he put the blood of the guilt offering on the lobe of the right ear of the one to be cleansed. I'm skipping some more because this just seems to be repeating itself. Verse 30, then he shall sacrifice the doves or young pigeons, such as the person can afford. One is a sin offering and one is a burnt offering together with the grain offering. In this way, the priest will make atonement before the Lord on behalf of the one to be cleansed. These are the regulations. Verse 33, the Lord said to Moses and Aaron when he entered the land of Canaan, which I am giving as your possession, and I put a spreading mold in a house in that land, the owner of the house must go and tell the priest. This is mold like, the green stuff. And tell the priest, I've seen something that looks like a defiling mold in my house. It's a living thing. Why would it be defiling? I mean, okay, health considerations. I can see that. You don't want mold in your house because of health considerations. I get that. But why would it be defiling aside from making you sick? Don't go to a goddamn priest over it. Go to a goddamn, I don't know, somebody with bleach. Verse 39, on the seventh day, the priest shall return to inspect the house. If the mold has spread on the walls, he is to order that the contaminated stones be torn out and thrown into an unclean place outside the town. He must have all the inside walls of the house scraped and the material that is scraped off dumped into an unclean place outside the town. Then they are to take other stones to replace these and take new clay and plaster the house. And I'm skipping some more. Verse 46, anyone who goes into the house while it is closed will be unclean till evening. Anyone who sleeps or eats in the house must wash their clothes. But if the priest comes to examine it and the mold has not spread after the house has been plastered, he shall pronounce the house clean. I wouldn't. I'd leave that house. I'd build another goddamn house. I mean, just because I don't know which molds are harmless and which are harmful. And there are some molds that can kill you. Seriously. Verse 54. These are the regulations for any defiling skin disease, sore, swelling, molds in fabric or in a house, to determine when something is clean or unclean. These are the regulations for defiling diseases and defiling molds. Well, I got 3 words. That is stupid. Chapter 15. The Lord said, speak to the Israelites and say to them, when any man has an unusual bodily discharge, such a discharge is unclean. Whether it continues flowing from his body or is blocked, it will make him unclean. This is how its discharge will bring about uncleanness. So don't give him the discharge in the first place, God. That's pretty simple, ain't it? I'm not sure, Marianne. Any bed the man with the discharge lies on will be unclean, and anything he sits on will be unclean. Anyone who touches this bed must wash their clothes and bathe with water, and they will be unclean till evening. Whoever sits on anything that the man with the discharge sat on must wash their clothes and bathe with water, and they will be unclean till evening. Whoever touches the man who has a discharge must wash their clothes and bathe with water, and will be unclean till evening. Then they talk about spitting, which is gross. Um, Verse 12, the clay pot that the man touches must be broken, and any wooden article is to be rinsed with water. I'm not even going to say anything about that. When a man is cleansed from his discharge, he is to count off 7 days for a ceremonial cleansing. He must wash his clothes and bathe himself with fresh water, and he will be clean. On the 8th day, he must take 2 doves or 2 young pigeons and come before the Lord to the entrance of the tent of meeting and give them to the priest. The priest is to sacrifice them, one for a sin offering, the other for a burnt offering. And this way he will make atonement for the Lord for the man because of his discharge. Again, why does the guy need atonement? When a man has an emission of semen, ooh, wow, he must bathe his whole body with water, and he will be unclean till evening. Any clothing or leather that has semen on it must be washed with water, and it will be unclean till evening. All right, so I got a question. What about wet dreams? Seriously? God, if you are so obsessed about this, why are you giving people diseases and wet dreams? Verse 18. When a man has sexual relations with a woman and there is an emission of semen, both of them must bathe with water, and they will be unclean till evening. What? What? That's the only way you have children, you idiot. Verse 19. When a woman has her regular flow of blood, the impurity of her monthly period will last 7 days, and anyone who touches her will be unclean till evening. Anything she lies on during her period will be unclean, and anything she sits on will be unclean. Anyone who touches her bed will be unclean. They must wash their clothes and bathe with water, and they will be unclean till evening. Anyone who touches anything she sits on will be unclean. They must wash their clothes and bathe with water. Whether it is the bed or anything she was sitting on, when anyone touches it, they will be unclean till evening. If a man has sexual relations with her and her monthly flow touches him, he will be unclean for 7 days. Any bed he lies on will be unclean. When a woman has a discharge of blood for many days at a time other than her monthly period, or has a discharge that continues beyond her period, she will be unclean as long as she has the discharge, just as in the days of her period. Okay, you know what? I'm just going to stop there because I'm going to break something if I read anymore. So, Well, and yes, this is where I plan to stop. Um, we'll pick up with chapter 16 next time. And, you know, this is this is unacceptable. I don't care if it was back in the Iron Age. The way they treated women and the way some societies treat women even today, I'm not going to name those societies, but you probably know what societies I'm talking about. No, it is not okay. It is not okay to treat women that way. It is not okay to treat sick people that way. Sick people need love and attention and, you know, people who may be unclean. I understand that for health you might want to distance yourself, but you know, and I understand that maybe at this time they didn't know about social distancing. Um, and I understand that, but still, there's no excuse whatsoever for anyone to be put outside of camp. Okay, there's just not. So that'll be all for today, and join me tomorrow for Atheist Church. And I did do a live stream earlier today with Damien at Hope. If you like my channel, you'll probably like his channel too. He does a lot of archaeology as well, with religion, um, and that kind of stuff. So go give that a look, and you know, you might want to sub to his channel. Um, I usually don't do 2 live streams in a day, but Damien said he could do the live stream today, so I was like, okay. And you know, and I still wanted to do my Saturday live stream. So I'll see you guys later and have a great day. Stay safe and goodbye.